Sorry, Chief, I've got my,
Christy, maybe we kind of give it just a second and see if anybody else joins. I don't want, unless you want to hear the whole spiel again, Eric, it's totally up to you.
No, so are you telling me that this is just a repeat of?
With different community members that want to join.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. I got it
So I
right.
just
I
don't
thought
want
this
to.
was an additional step to all that, but you have my input, so if we're good, then yeah.
Yeah, unless there's anything you didn't add or have thought about in the meantime, or Richard, unless you have any additional questions for him, maybe anything clarifying.
No, I really appreciated the input you provided at the meeting at the McKinley Center. I thought that was really good. So, no, I guess in general. So the themes that we had in all of these meetings related to visibility and responsiveness and openness to alternatives, I think are still things that we're considering. We're in the advanced stages of our analysis here. So I think that on those very comments that these meetings have been good for us because it's underscored the visibility issue, which gets at how much or how little proactive time people have, especially in some parts of the community, and but also how open they are to different strategies to improve officers' use of time.
Fantastic. Well, let me know. I'll stay on, and if something comes up, I'll chime in.
Okay.
Eric, did you get a chance to see any of the deeds presentation yesterday through council? If not, I was going to send you the PowerPoint of some of the stuff that we kind of found through the efforts and stuff. And the I was going to send it out to both the advisory board and the impact panel too, but I'll email it to you today just to see if you kind of see how we figured it out and then what the next steps are. Yeah,
that'd be great. No, I was unable to be part of that yesterday, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll get you the PowerPoint, and then some of the I'm working on probably by Monday I'll have some talking points that I want to send out to some different groups just on it might even be sooner, might be tomorrow, on what what we've accomplished with that, and if free time today, that we just kind of see where we are in the next steps, because I know we talked about it a few times. We did some presentations with you, and then we did the pilot, so we're 7 months into the pilot. And now we're getting ready next month to start like kind of how this is going to look for moving forward. And so I kind of wanted to get you an update on that. So I'll email over.
That'd be great, because I set up a meeting with our business group down here at the end of June to kind of go over that ordinance and some other things that Grant wants to go over. And so all of that will be helpful for that. And obviously I'll invite you all.
Perfect.
I know Mr. Miller is on. I can see him. So yeah, so I'll stay in contact with you all on that as well. And as this moves forward, might be a good time.
And I'll get that email with some of that data out for you too, so you have it. Okay. I'm sorry, Richard, I interrupted you.
I'm sorry I interrupted. Can I get that PowerPoint too? That's presentation? Great.
Yeah, I can send you, Richard, I'll send you both the PowerPoint and the kind of the final closeout report so you can kind of see it.
Perfect.
And then, and I can send you the original PowerPoint so you kind of understand the concept of what we're doing with that stuff. So I can send all that. And then Eric, look for it. I'm going to try, if this meeting goes as quickly as it looks like it's going to go, I might have some time to get through that email today and get it out by the end of the day or early tomorrow of just that overview so everybody sees it.
Perfect. I'll review it next week. I'm headed out of town tomorrow and I'll be back Tuesday. So I'll review it. I appreciate that very much. Absolutely.
Just trying to keep everybody up to date with what we're doing. I know everybody gets a little frustrated with some of the stuff that's happening, and some things, it's just hard.
I get it.
Hey, Chief, I didn't get a chance to tell you I appreciated you guys staging that arrest as I walked out of City Hall the other night.
It's funny, as I was driving by watching all the cars. I don't know if you saw me, I was driving by really slow. And then I was like, okay, they're doing that. And then I saw you walking, and then I saw you slow down, and I was going to stop and say, hey, do you want to ride somewhere? And then I was like, oh no, he's watching this happen. This is part of it's a ploy. And so I was like, I'm out of here. They've got that. Yeah, I planned that for you to see all the hard work we're doing downtown,
No, the guy they arrested, he was quite a force in the square before the meeting. He was yelling and throwing stuff and things like that. So.
Oh, got it. Well, I'm glad that they got out there. Yeah, I saw you walking by and I was like, he looks like he wants to be there. He doesn't need to be saved. I'm going to leave him.
Right. No, yeah. Okay.
That, and I was super sleepy. Christy, how long do we wait for people? What's our plan here?
I mean, I would give it until 45, but
Look at what we found. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you? I'm sorry I've missed the past couple of meetings. I have to choose between meetings now.
I understand we all do, so no worries on that one.
And you caught this one.
Yeah, we actually were just kind of talking about like how we were going to work through the next steps of this, and hadn't really started yet, so you're not technically late because we haven't done anything. So yay. And a lot of this is really just a conversation on how officers, where you're seeing them, how they're showing up, what you expect from the officers, and some of the conversations we've had, but in connection with patrol deployment especially, and timing and districting and schedules and a lot of that stuff. So this is part of the community outreach side of this. So, and you're pretty familiar with a lot of the programs we do because you're really involved and kind of get that. So that's great.
Yes, we try.
Should we go through the structured PowerPoint presentation now so that the community member can get an appreciation for what we're doing?
Perfect.
Right,
Yeah, we can start that.
Okay, let me share my screen. I'll do it this time, Christy. Okay. So as the chief mentioned, the study that we're doing with the police department focuses on their needs in patrol and patrol only, or let's say field services, because there are some related aspects besides people who are assigned to beats or patrol areas. But we're not looking at investigations or administration or anything like that. It's really focused on patrol, and I think, as the chief indicated, there are some real needs there that needs some attention, and our firm provides these services, and so that's what we're doing. So let me start out by um, just giving a few minutes summary of the work that we're doing for the city and what the laying out the whole process will look like, but also the kinds of things we'd like to hear from you and the other community member about your views on patrol services. But just by way of introduction here, I'm Richard Brady. I'm the president of Matrix Consulting Group, and I lead this project. I lead all of our police projects. Our firm's been around for 21 years. We provide a lot of services to local government, but our largest area is working for and with and supporting police departments around the country, a few in Canada as well. We have worked with a few police departments in Nevada. In the past, we worked for Las Vegas Metro. We worked with Alco, and we just started a project in Henderson. There's two things that characterize who we are and the work that we provide for our clients. And one is who we are. And our team is a stable team. It's not a bunch of subcontractors. We have a team of about 8 or 10 people that work on all of the studies. And so there's a consistency and depth and quality that we're really proud of. Some of them are people like me who have never had a job in law enforcement, but all I've done is police studies for 43 years, pretty much. But we also have people on our teams who used to have a career in law enforcement, up to and including being a chief, but now are full-time law enforcement analysts, and they're on our team not as window dressing because they had that former job, but because they're really good analysts as well. And then that hybrid approach works really well for us. But the other thing, you'll see, especially once you get a chance to review our report once it becomes public, is we pride ourselves on our fact-based approach to analyzing problems in law enforcement and analytically coming up with solutions to make it work better. In this case, that's going to be relating to staffing levels in patrol and deployment. That fact-based approach doesn't ignore the fact that actual people actually receive the service. And so these meetings and other meetings that we've had have been very important to hear from the community about current services and needs now and going forward into the future. Pressing. Oh, hold on. So the overview of the study. So as I mentioned before, and as the chief mentioned, our work is evaluating patrol staffing and deployment. And by deployment, I mean looking at the shift structure, the kinds of shifts that they had, but also deploying them geographically in the city. And Reno's a complicated picture because you've got a very dense area downtown, but you're a very large geographical city. And those densities get quite a bit less dense as you get further out from the city, and that presents some real problems in terms of how you can effectively deploy people to achieve a result of a consistent kind of service in the community. So as part of this, we're developing a very comprehensive analysis of workload and staffing needs, as well as doing geographic analysis of how people are deployed by shift and by day of week. This is the fourth of 4 community meetings that we've had to get input from the community. 2 of them, like this one, have been virtual. 2 of them have been hybrid, both in person and virtual. We had an in-person and virtual one at City Hall on Tuesday evening. Let me show you through these 2 pictures here why this is important. And I've always been a strong believer that a picture tells 1,000 stories. This shows a before and after portrait of a former client and actually a current client that we've had in San Jose, California, in terms of the impacts of not being consistently able to deploy across the city based on need. The picture on the left is a picture of the beats in San Jose before we worked with them. And without getting too much into the detail, but the bluish and purplish numbers or geographical beat areas are areas that have 20 to 40% below the average for the entire city in terms of calls for service. And the ones that are pink or red or some variation on that are 20 to 40% above the average for the city. But I think the thing I want to get across is just how much it varies in the city. And San Jose is not unique. We work for Los Angeles and Raleigh, North Carolina, and several other cities. And this is not an uncommon before and after. We will be doing this for Reno as well. But the after picture on the left is where you want to be. So sure, there's still different levels of call for service in each one of those geographical areas, but there needs to be a more consistent ability to handle those calls for service, but also have time free to be able to engage with the community, to talk to them, to hear from them about what their problems are, to go to community meetings, things like that, to deploy themselves in areas where there have been problems. And that's why you need something where you don't have different expectations of service in one part of the city as opposed to the other. So the community input that we have been seeking in these meetings is looking at 3 kinds of areas, but we're not closing ourselves off to other things that are part of your experience with field services, with the patrol part of the Reno Police Department. But those relate to community presence, responsiveness to community needs, and proactivity and problem solving. What I mean by those on community presence, are officers visible in the area that you live or work? Are they engaged with you? Do they get out of their cars and stop and talk with you? Do they meet with you if you would like to schedule a meeting with them? Do you have any suggestions on how the Reno Police Department could be more engaged? By responsiveness, First of all, there's a call-related element to that. There's, as you know, there's a wide spectrum of things that police officers respond to in the field. There's very urgent and emergency calls that need a rapid response, and usually community expectations are under 5 minutes, or maybe a little bit over 5 minutes. And has that been your experience or your expectation? Emergency calls in most communities are less than 10% of the workload that they're handling. So the 90% of the other things that they're handling are different kinds of priority. But those kind of things shape experiences within the community as well. And so while that may be not as rapid as an emergency call, what has been your experience or expectations about a non-emergency kind of quote lower priority kind of call for service? In many communities, that's something like 30 or 40 minutes. One of the things we're interested in is alternative response. If you requested a response from the police department for a non-emergency report, or would you be satisfied with a civilian paraprofessional to respond to take the report? This also has an element of response to situations involving mental health or behavioral health kinds of problems, homelessness types of issues, and the like. Reno has a handful of what they call community services officers who, when they're available, can take reports for these types of things. As part of the study, we would like to look at opportunities to expand the use of civilian paraprofessionals. So it's good for us to see how acceptable that is to the community. For proactivity, when concerns of crime or quality of life issues are brought up, have they been responsive in addressing them and working with you or through community groups that you may be associated with? Have they listened and translated the input that you provided into some change that had an impact on the problem that you've identified? So we're interested in what the highest priority public safety issues are for you. So we're also interested in, and maybe we can start out here, are what are the law enforcement related problems that most concern you? Is it property crimes or violent crime, drugs, traffic enforcement, other types of issues? And questions that get down to a very basic concept of living in a community, and that is, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe at nighttime as well as in the daytime walking in your neighborhood, for example? So that is where we would like to focus our attention, but it's wide open for both of you to provide any input.
Both of
Let
who?
me unmute myself. Go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Well, so I work in a pretty unique situation. I'm the general manager for the Aces, and we're the minor league ball team right downtown. So the partnership with RPD, RFD, REMSA, all the services that we need to operate is super important. And I've been here about 2.5 years, and it's improved pretty dramatically in a good direction. I'm also on the downtown Reno partnership board. Having Chief Nance come and speak at those meetings, having Lieutenant Johnson there, who's kind of our what's the term, Chief Nance, CAO, Community Actions Officer. Having a personal one-on-one relationship with him, having his phone number to be able to call him when encampments start to pop up is important. About two years ago, we had an incident after a game, unrelated to the game itself, but it was more of a domestic dispute that just unfolded on our front lawn. But a guy pulled out a gun, fired a couple shots in the air. It was terrifying. Yeah. So from that point on, we started employing 2 RPD at every game. And, I think the basis of what I'm getting to is like that presence. Obviously they're there on site if something were to happen. But even on top of that, just the presence of having a squad car parked out front throughout the game, lights on after the game, has made a big difference, I think, in our employees, how they feel from a safety standpoint, as well as the fans. So more of that, please. Whatever we can do to help as a community partner, we're in for it. And like I mentioned, the ambassador program through the Downtown Reno Partnership Board has been great. I feel like they've had a good synergistic partnership with RPD. So yeah, that's my feedback.
So that you said that they got services and relationships with the police department improved 2.5 years ago. So that was the watershed event that happened that refocused attention and got at least an officer there for every game.
Yeah. I think that definitely, it caused, the next day kind of a emergency meeting leadership. And that was the first thing that came to light. We're like, yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. We're going to start doing that. And then when Chief Nance got to town, it was just, I reached out right away, wanted to get a relationship going, and it's been great. It's been super helpful to know that we have personnel that we can reach out to, and they're very responsive.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I've been to a couple of games there. You got a really
good. Awesome. I hope you have nothing but good things to say.
Very good things to say. It's been a while. It's when Brendan Crawford was there.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. And I have to say that since Chief Nance has been here, we have seen more community engagement and a more welcome feeling for us as a nonprofit organizations coming in. So I appreciate that. The involvement, the invitations for us to be present for many of these functions. My question to you, I've done a ride along because I was trying to understand the other side. I see it from our side as a nonprofit. We work with victims of crime, but I wanted to see the other side, the response and whatnot. So I did a ride along. And in my conversation with the officer that I was having the ride along with, it didn't seem like we have enough officers to do everything we want to do as a city. So, and I think it's great that we're having all these community events because I think it's much needed for our community. And I'll speak on the immigrant, undocumented Latinx community part. I think it's great when we have officers present because it makes that gap. It connects us that it's not like in our countries where, officers can be bought or there's the danger of that if they don't like you, bribery, you have to bribe an officer. There's none of that. So having officers always present, creating a relationship is wonderful. But do we have enough officers to do that? Do we have enough officers to be everywhere?
I can speak on that a little bit if Richard, you want me to take that part of it? So the short answer is no. The long answer is that we're continuing to grow and build. We had 10 full-time employee positions last budget cycle. We're looking at adding more this budget cycle and continuously building up those numbers. Where we see some of the issues are in retirements and vacancies, which we're pretty successful at filling right now. I mean, we have been moving forward really well. The recruiting team has done an amazing job, and we've hired a lot of people and getting them through training. But there's a delay and a lag in that. It takes about 18 months to get them ready to be on their own, and then there's still just a brand new officer that we have some struggles in how their their knowledge base. It just takes a while to learn this job. But I think that the big part of that is going to be that we have to continue to do both while managing not doing more with less. But I think that these community outreach and the trust that we're building and the opportunities to deploy resources differently and the stuff that Richard's doing gives us a better way on how we can reduce calls for service, freeing up the officers to do more things. And without establishing community trust, we aren't going to have that success. And so, police can't do everything, and we're not claiming to, but working with our partners to try and figure out what we can do better. And how we can respond in a better space is what our goals are. And studies like this are going to help on how we deploy, but also that community involvement. And I appreciate your very kind words about, how we've been moving forward on that, but I do think that that's going to help. So the short answer is no. The long answer is we are trying to get this better, and we have a lot of support to do that. So I hope that it will continue to improve with our staffing numbers.
If I can add a couple of things. So some of the problems that the Reno Police Department is shared by almost every law enforcement agency in the country, and the chief has alluded to the position vacancies and the pool of qualified candidates that you have to keep up with attrition and people leaving for a wide variety of reasons. So there are position vacancies above what historical norms are in Reno, as well as almost every law enforcement agency in the country. And we can help with some strategies there. Some other things are more unique to Reno. And I think that if you think about that San Jose map that I put up a little while ago, Reno has some similarities to that, in that it's got a very dense core, but you go north and south for a very long way. And it's, while there are fewer calls because there are fewer people the further you get out, the need to have the same expectation of service, not just on the part of the community and getting an initial response, but many calls require more than one officer. And so you need to have an environment in which backup can, when appropriate, can be in a reasonable time frame as well. So that's something that you can control to some extent. Clearly, it will entail money to the extent that there's a gap between where you are now and where you need to be, but we'll be making that very apparent in our analysis.
The other concern I have is when you were mentioning having non-officers take reports.
Mm-hmm.
Again, speaking from our undocumented community, Latinx community, are these individuals going to have the same, not the same, obviously, the training to meet those individuals where they're at? Because with our undocumented population, they're already living in the shadow. And so it's a sensitive issue. We try to fit in, and we try to be, seen as documented individuals in this community. But when I feel safer with an officer, I know the difference, in being involved in all this. I know the difference between an officer and someone that's not an officer. I'm just concerned that our community might not be as welcoming or fearful of an individual that's not a police officer versus someone that's a community officer taking a report. I'm not sure. That would be something that I would like to look further into, is to see how we can bridge that concern of having our undocumented or immigrant people population feel comfortable with that.
That's such a good question, and you're not alone in that. Reno's not alone in that. It would be obviously really important, as you look at expanding alternative response from what you've got right now, is to make sure that you've got the same sensitivity, awareness, and cultural competency and language ability that you would expect from any officer responding to a problem that you have in any community. It's a complicated answer, though, because some new arrivals here are afraid of people in uniforms as well. And many communities have found that having community services officers, paraprofessionals trained to a level, can help mitigate that fear. So it'd be important at program design, if the data shows that we can support, the city can support a significant expansion of the community services program, that they're trained, supported, and can address as appropriate the different communities in the city.
And if I can just chime in, we already have a lot of these services, and from our front desk staff, where you can file reports through to community service officers that respond. And we do include them in our crisis intervention training. And a lot of the trainings that we conduct are for both professional and sworn staff. Obviously, the training is different in some ways, like the de-escalation training and things that we expect our armed employees to have. It can be different than what we give the professional staff side of this that are responding to calls in this capacity or dealing with members of the public. But the other trainings and the same expectations are there for the respect and the treatment of all the people that they're coming in contact with, whether they're victims or suspects of crimes, and really to maintain that idea that they understand the issues that can arise from treating of people differently, especially people that are fearful of coming in contact with the police, even if they're not an armed member of the police department, but just with the fears that can happen from different groups in our communities with dealing with the police. So they are aware of it. We do work on that training and make sure that they are aware. And so again, I think that they are just as trained in those areas as my sworn staff, which makes me comfortable with them dealing with those situations, but not violent situations or people where they're dealing with suspects or things like that.
And then my third item is, again, because we work with victims of crime, and the one thing that we hear continuously from our survivors is, I have a TPO, I call the police, but they never show up, or they show up and he's already gone. And I again, referring back to my ride along, I saw how on the screen it would prioritize the calls there, and I agree with the how it prioritized them. But when our survivors are in crisis and they're fearful for their life and what this person can do, I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how to make them feel safe. That yes, you do need this TPO, because this TPO not only is a paper trail, but it also, and you do need to make those phone calls so that we have that that paper trail of the calls coming in. But most of our survivors feel like, well, it's you know, it's not good for much, especially in our stalking and our cases where our clients are being threatened, and they have a TPO, but the police don't get there in a timely manner when the person is present. And those are some of the things that we continuously still hear.
Do you have any suggestions on how to increase the trust of people to contact the police department for those kinds of problems?
So what we've been trying to do is anything that we associate ourselves with as far as police department, when we're in helping with the interviews, when we're in at the symposium, we try to promote those things online through our social media to encourage that trust. We have what we call Los Cafecitos twice a month, where we try to share a resource. And we also include law enforcement in that. We had the HEAT team a couple weeks ago, so that our community knows that our police department is working with, that they're not like in our country, so that we have a good relationship with our police department, and they can be trusted, and they should be trusted because it's important for their case and their safety. So we do try to work with them on that. How to do it wider than that, other than all of us as community leaders doing that, I don't see, that's the only way I see. Example, the upcoming soccer game. I'm so looking forward to promoting that, and because as Latinx, well, a lot of people, but more from my perspective, Latinx, we love soccer, and that's a community event where we'll have police there, we'll have that relationship there, and we'll promote it. So those relationships are important, but how to go beyond that, I'm not sure.
And there's a lot of different relationships. You've got relationships with the chief and other command staff, maybe programmatic people that are like in a liaison kind of role with the community. But certainly very important for this study is the people who are assigned to patrol. There's a large number of them who are interacting with the community every day. that we need to make sure that they are the ambassadors from of the police department to engender trust in all of the communities in Reno.
And I think my case manager had an add-on to that, as she was listening to, because she also speaks to a lot of our survivors. So I'll have her ask her a question.
Hi.
Hi. So one of the things that happens frequently with our clients, and it has a lot to do with the way that they perceive police in their own countries.
Yeah.
Sandy actually mentioned quite a few things of how there's a distrust with the police department or any type of authority. And one of the things that frequently happens is that they are constantly being threatened, not just with police or with their life or hurting somebody, or not just getting hurt themselves, but also their family members, as well as with being reported to immigration as part of a way of controlling them to not speak to police or authorities. And we want to be able to tell them to freely speak with police and do any reporting, especially if they're being harassed or stalked. Now, this happens a lot even when there is, they're no longer with the abuser, let's say in that particular case, but the abuser is not being financially responsible for their children, etc., and is threatening them with harming them, the children, or with immigration. Now, I think the point that I'm trying to get to is we want them to have a sense of security to reporting to police, but how can they have no idea how to proceed, and we have no idea how to be able to ensure them that actions will be taken or it will be taken seriously. Because it comes to a point where they're being affected in many, many ways, and those threats can actually become lethal.
Yeah.
Because the threats that we have, I can specify a particular case where a client says, I am no longer asking for my child support or anything because I was threatened to be sent back to my country in a garbage bag in pieces. She says, but I haven't reported it because I have no proof of it. He tells me on the phone, or he has other individuals, co-workers, to say, you know what's going to happen to you if you continue with this. So I think what I'm trying to get to is if there's a way that we can explain to them the process, or a way that it can be taken seriously so they feel like they have that protection, not just the saying of the TPO.
Yeah. Let me ask this question. So the kinds of threats and other types of calls that people are situations that people find themselves in, many times, as you said, they won't call the police and they out of fear, etc. But probably many times they do. And do you know anything about the experience of when they do have an initial contact with a patrol officer who responds to a problem like that, that's a threat or harassment or something like that, how they supported the community member when they did respond?
Usually what they tell us is they took the report and then that was it.
Okay.
I never heard anything back. I don't know if anything happened. I don't know if they found them. They're just left as they started.
Yeah.
And in some cases, the process works like we would like to see it ideally, where the officer is carrying, they connect them with VSU, and they get the services they need, and then they come to us.
Okay.
We would just like it to be
uniform. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. That's good to hear.
And that was it from my end.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
Can I step in a little bit and say a few words?
Of course.
I agree with Chief Nancy when she say the community have to start participating in their own rescue. I'm the co-founder director of Black Wall Street. I'm on both sides of the fence. I had a extensive criminal history where I didn't like the law. And now I've sat next to Officer Miller in interviews. I've participated in the ride-alongs, and I get a chance to see it from both sides. I also get this chance to see it as a Black man who comes from a community where we don't talk to police officers. However, I strongly feel that the Black community have to stop somewhat playing the victim as well and start stepping into role leaders, role models, and start directing our youth to come and participate in a lot of these city council members meetings and these chief of police quarterly meetings. I started bringing students there to get an understanding of what's happening in the community. I guess my suggestion is when we do have these faith-based meetings with the churches, that is the best time to, I guess, get the church leaders to bring the Black community in and get them more involved. I kind of get tired of seeing the GoFundMe. I seen the police shooting that happened in Sparks. I get it and I understand both sides of it, but I really think that I really know that the Black community have to start participating in their own rescue. And maybe when you have those faith-based meetings, bring the church in and start getting more involved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And let me just make one clarification because so I don't know whether you saw the beginning of so the focus of our study is on patrol and patrol only, and a lot of the kinds of programmatic support that you described would be coming from often non-patrol kinds of people. However, patrol is always going to be the first line of both defense and presence of law enforcement in the community. And their involvement with the faith-based community or with other kinds of programs and services in the city is very important. So I agree with what you said, and thank you for bringing it up.
Leslie has her hand raised.
Good morning, everybody. I have a couple of comments. One is I agree with Dawn. If there's a way to bring in the communities to participate in their own salvation, per se, would be helpful. The cafecitos that Sandy does are very, very effective, and I'd like to suggest that maybe if it comes from Reno PD and you do a partnership with Tu Casa Latina to do a community cafecito on behalf of RPD, that you might get more. You're bringing RPD directly into it rather than funneling the information through the handful of community leaders that we have in the Latino community. That brings me to something that I've proposed for many years in this community, and that's that all of our public bodies be representative of the community we serve. So if we have 25% of the community is Latino, in the theory says that 25% of the police force should be Latino, and so on, and female, and yada, yada, yada. We're not there. We've been trying to work on that for a long time, but I think that there needs to be a really targeted effort towards being representative on the force of the community that we're serving. The other comment that I would have on community policing and having the advocates on the street, as you know, in an effort to assist with the officers, is that it strikes me that is similar to a comment that I heard from a doctor's office the other day, that a physician's assistant is the same thing as a doctor unless they're going to do surgery. There's going to be a difference in training and the difference in training and the difference in mindset between the officer and the community people is going to be vast. And that's something that I don't think can be overcome, but it does need to be acknowledged and recognized that there is a difference in the way an officer would handle the situation with the assurity of what they know exactly from the intensive training they've had versus the community service person who only has so much teeth into the conversation. And, you know, and I think the cruxus to that is when that conversation turns, and there should be an officer or a higher level person involved in that dialogue. When, you know, when do they turn that switch and say, actually, this is out of my purview and I need to bring in somebody that has more authority than I do? I know that that's addressed, but that would be the thing that concerns me, because I see that as a general societal trend for across, whether it's the medical field or now the police department. I just think that we have to be very cautious with that kind of thing. I inherently agree with it. I do think that the community does need to come in. I do think those community relations are incredibly important. I'd like to see even more civilians be trained into some of the things where when we come upon something, we're better equipped to handle it. As Sandy was saying, before you can even get there, if you can get there. So if you've got an aunt on the scene and you've got a domestic violence thing, what does the aunt do? You know, it's like, we're all going to do it a little bit differently, but maybe if we're doing it the way that you guys do it, we'd have better outcomes.
That's some really good points that you made. I think your analogy of a physician and a physician's assistant or similar classifications in the nursing field is a good one. And but there's still a role for physician's assistants and similar classifications
Definitely.
in healthcare. So same thing in law enforcement, that program, especially if you're going to expand the relatively limited program that the Reno Police Department has of having civilians respond to certain types of calls, in order to expand it, needs to be very carefully thought out and supported in terms of what kind of calls that they would be going to, what kinds of calls would they be going on their own, or maybe in conjunction with a police officer, the kind of training that would be appropriate for the kinds of things that we respond to. Like they wouldn't go to a domestic violence or something like that, but
Right.
they could go to a cold, relatively minor theft or something like that, or quality of life types of situation. But for whatever it is determined that are appropriate types of calls and levels of calls to respond to, they need to be supported from everything from recruitment to training and supervision and support throughout their employment and working with the community. Thanks.
Greg, if you want to unmute.
I know how to do that. I commend you all on being able to show your hand on the screen, because I still don't know how to do that. But I want to just echo both Chris and Sandy, what they had mentioned earlier about Chief Nance. That they've been able, since she's been there, she's reached out. We've sat down face to faces together as well here. I'm the general manager and vice president at the J Resort, and Jacobs has done quite a large investment purchasing a lot of the property of the almost 20 square blocks of this part of the city. And the idea obviously is to create a clean and safe environment for not only the residents here in the city of Reno, but also for tourism. That's a big part of our community and investment in our community, all those dollars that do come in to the neighborhood. And so the resources that are currently available that Chief Nance has offered to us are things that we're going to start taking advantage of and working with her and her team. That I think as we continue to expand, I mean, we're about 300 million and about probably another billion to go in continued expansion over the next 5 to 7 years. And our focus really is creating an atmosphere where people feel it's safe and it's clean, right, in the area. And I think the patrols are very important. I also think that the community action officers and things that should reflect our community. They should be people that are embedded within our community already and engage with them. So not when there's an issue, but prior to an issue, right? So there is already that relationship and trust built within our community and woven within that to ensure that anybody that comes from the outside in sees that we have together a complete the resources, everything available to be able to reach out to different demographics within our city, right? I do think my observations, and forgive me, I've worked at many places around the country, and I've only been here for about 10 months in the Reno area. but clearly homelessness, drugs and alcohol, we call them undesirables, things like that. I understand it's a community issue everywhere I've been. There's no right or one answer to that. However, where I've seen the most success was there was the greatest amount of resources that were into to Sandy's point, the greatest amount of resources from the community are the tools that would be necessary for the community action officers to go out there and offer that, so that they know that that's available. And we get over the fear of those living in the shadows in our community, right? Because they're here, they want a quality of life, the whole 9 yards. Listen, they're always going to be there. We can't. It is what it is, right? And so they are part of our community, whether we like it or not. But they have to have easy, safe availability to those resources, and the community officers, patrols, things of that nature that are non-law enforcement, direct law enforcement type related, right? The outreach, the things that we talked about, those are the things that I think we should really invest in more so than anything, because that's going to have one of the greatest return on investment for us as a community. But also, we want to kind of turn the page a little bit on, Reno is a developing city. I think I've talked to the mayor. She's visited other cities and say we're light years above and beyond some of the other places in our country that are similar to ours. But we got to get the word out, and we got to make sure that the word of mouth it's a clean, safe, friendly, fun atmosphere. They have concerts, they have downtown. You walk in the streets, you can feel safe. I just think that to me, all begins with the grassroots, the patrol people on the ground, and the investment needs to be there as well, because then you will have reduced reaction times, right? And you can have more trained or more accurate reaction, right? The right people are reacting to a situation, right? Whether it be Hispanic or Asian or alcohol related, drug related, psychology, whatever it is, those resources. And I think they're out there. I just think got to kind of bring them all together somehow and encourage them to engage with our law enforcement agency, because they have the resources there. I just think they would have to make a connection there, right? I think that would be the most effective thing. So, Donald, Leslie, I think you're dead on. It takes a whole community, it takes the whole village to work together. But those resources, right, and how we combine them and make them work is going to be, at the end of the day, once we figure that out. And I don't know if you have case studies, Richard, that have done that better or done that very well. But I think that's the direction I think we need to go as a community, and it's for the city of Reno, because we're not slowing down. We're still investing, and we're banking on the increase of tourism and the increase of getting people downtown, because it's a fun and clean and safe environment for them.
Thank you. Knowingly or unknowingly, you really hit at the heart of our study here, because it really does get down to not just the events that they respond to, but what they do before there are events. Everything in terms of relationship building, community engagement, communication, all those types of things eventually factor into people feeling safe and having some sort of balance about people's experience with living in a community. But officers need time to do any of that. If we were just measuring the effectiveness of the police department by how quickly they responded to a call of any priority, you would not get at the heart of what you're talking about here. That they need something like 40% of their time to be able to do that, because if it's significantly lower than that, I could show you statistically that it happens in like 30-second increments or something that you can't really use it for. And if they don't have that time, it starts to impact the reactive stuff too. It starts to delay their response time to the calls that happen as well, because they have to disengage from something else to get re-engaged in something that's more important. So we start from the concept of proactivity and what's an appropriate target and build patrol around that. And that experience, as I said earlier, needs to be somewhat consistent across the city. Like you've got more people, more risk downtown, but people outside of downtown have expectations too. And there are different kinds of problems than downtown, but there are still problems that need to be dealt with. So thank you for saying it the way you did, and I appreciate it.
Donald,
I'm
if you
sorry.
want to unmute.
Yeah, I'm sorry I came in late, but are the ambassador team going to expand? Is it going to go to Midtown as well as a little bit into Sparks? How would the ambassadors benefit from this program? I'm sorry I'm late, so you probably
No
already
worries. No,
answered
yeah,
this
no worries
question.
at all.
It-
So go ahead.
Richard, I'm sorry, the ambassador program wouldn't have anything to do with this because that's not run by the police department. So we're really talking about police officers or our professional staff members like community service officers that have a focus on responding to calls for service and being proactive activity in that enforcement. So it really would have nothing, this is not a conversation we would be looking at the ambassador program right now. That's really much outside the scope of what we can create. So it's Reno Police Department specific throughout the entire city, and then with based on the information we're gleaning from this and the calls for service and things like that.
Thank you. Let us know how Black Wall Street can help.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions about the work that we're doing?
One item, pre-COVID, we were discussing having different organizations with the trusted community following to set up once a month or once every other month to take to have police present to take reports for those individuals that are afraid to come to the police department or substations, and to make ourselves available to have an officer present and do reports. I don't know if that would help in any way if we could revisit that.
But could you explain a little bit more what you're talking about here?
So we were having individuals that did not want to report.
Yeah.
Survivors that did not want to go to the police department and report. They were afraid to go to the. So one of the ideas that came up in our discussions with law enforcement was for us nonprofit organizations to open up our doors one day, one weekend, a month, or every other month, however that worked. And invite our community that if they had concerns or needed to follow the report, they could show up to our offices and file those reports in a more trusted setting. And I don't know if that's something we could revisit again, or if it's feasible, possible, to discuss again.
That's a very interesting question. I'm not going to give you an immediate response, and I'm definitely going to think about it.
I can give you a little bit of a response on that. We actually just did this with our front desk personnel. They went to an above 55 living facility that is here that people are having problems reporting things like a burglary or an auto theft, and because they didn't understand the reporting mechanisms online. And so we did actually do that. So that is something we can work through. It probably lacks some consistency. So it would probably be as needed basis. I don't know if I would want to make that the primary reporting mechanism for people, but to gain that trust and have that opportunity when we're seeing an issue, it is something we can accommodate with our front desk staff, and we have done it before.
Great idea.
So just let us know when you need something like that. If you're seeing, we usually do it if we're seeing like that one, they had a lot of auto burglaries or auto thefts in the neighborhood, and they were having a hard time reporting online. They needed the reports for their insurance purposes. We needed to be aware of it. So we sent front desk staff out to help facilitate.
No.
Any other comments, questions? All right then. Well, I want to thank you all for showing up here this morning. I appreciate it. It made it really easy having it on Zoom. Hopefully, it facilitated the conversation, but we appreciate your time here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.